Hi there. Welcome to Conversations, where we seek to advance your leader and team excellence by discussing relevant topics that impact today's organizations. Welcome to the show.
Right. Well, hey there, leader, and welcome to Conversations for Leaders and Teams, where today we have Tabitha Stadler with us talking about conservation leadership. Tabitha is the Executive Director of Environmental Protection in the Caribbean. Tabitha leads the international operations, including creating the vision, strategic plan, and overseeing all aspects of mission implementation. She began this role in 2019 and splits her time between South Florida and St. Thomas, U.S. Virgin Islands. How nice. Tabitha's career spans more than 20 years and encompasses leadership positions responsible for environmental education, science research, and policy. Tabitha has a master's degree in science communications from the University of South Florida, St. Petersburg, a bachelor's degree in maritime studies from Eckerd College, and received several awards and served on many committees and boards. And for all you Clifton Strengths enthusiasts, Tabitha leads with achiever, connectedness, learner, relator, and individualization. Tabitha, welcome to the show.
Hi, Kelly. Thank you so much for having me. This is going to be fun.
Yeah. Yes, I'm glad you're here. And I think this is an interesting topic. I'm interested in learning more about conservation and conservation leadership. So thanks for joining me here today. And I'd love to start by maybe just unpacking what is EPIC.
Oh, absolutely. So just to say again, I'm the Director of Environmental Protection in the Caribbean, EPIC, EPIC. We go by our acronym. And you can find us online at epicislands.org. That's also our social media handle, because there's a lot of other EPICs out there. But I guess we're a typical conservation organization. We work with the environment and nature, but there's a few things that make us special that I'll share with you, Kelly,
Yes.
which is, first off, we're Caribbean focused. One of the few nature organizations that only works in the Caribbean. We don't work worldwide. That is our area. And well, of course, it's an amazing place on Earth, an international gem. It's really big. It's about 1.5 million square miles or 4 million square kilometers. So a giant area with 7,000 different islands and islets and keys and little rocks and sandbars. So vast and diverse. But usually I don't have to describe it too much to people because they have this picture in their mind. And Kelly, do you have a picture of the Caribbean in your mind too?
I do.
White sand beaches, palm trees, right?
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, it's an icon of the world. But I want to share that it's also incredibly diverse, and there's lots of things people don't know about it, like that there are many mountains, 4,000, 5,000, 6,000 feet high. So it's cold at night in some places with rainforests, and there's mangrove forests at the coast. 30 different countries and territories with a handful of languages, from English to Spanish, French, Dutch, Creole. So diverse people and diverse nature, which has earned it to be designated as a biodiversity hotspot. And that means the diverse nature is unlike any other place on Earth. More unique plants and animals than other places, and lots of what we call endemic species. That means plants and animals that are found nowhere else on Earth. So we focus on the Caribbean, and it's an amazing place. And it's also a threatened area, right? Islands are very fragile. We have sea levels rising and lots of hurricanes and storms. The island economy can be fragile. And so, these places are under threat in some cases. And so calling attention to them to conserve and protect them is part of our mission. But it's not the only thing that makes us unique. And I think this fits very well with the show today is we're very people focused. Something that makes EPIC unique is our focus on people and community-based actions, including leadership, in that part of our vision statement is about the Caribbean region leading the world in sustainability. And it's an area with a huge amount of entrepreneurial spirit. There's lots of things like plastic bag bans and innovations, including being energy efficient and carbon neutral. And so we really look for those win-wins where there's some community support as well as environmental protection. But just to sum it up, essentially we do the things that a lot of environmental nonprofits do, which is essentially C's: science, research, and monitoring to look at species and share that knowledge, education of kids, but also adults, professionals, and like forestry departments and elected officials, advocacy for pro-environmental laws and rules, and stewardship, where we're actually out there planting trees, like being good stewards of the earth and cleaning up pollution and things like that. So we've been around since 2000, 20 years at this. And yeah, I hope you'll check more out about EPIC after seeing
Yeah. That sounds so interesting. I mean, you just gave us a boatload of information and a lot of things that I never thought of when I think about the Caribbean and about those 7,000 different islands. 7,000. That is amazing. That is amazing. I love that. And I heard you talk a little bit about leadership in there. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on this and what conservation leadership actually is.
Yes, if you just look it up, there are some degrees and things in it, but essentially when we at EPIC, we talk about conservation leadership, we're talking pretty simply about just taking actions and making decisions that are pro-environmental, that are friendly to the earth. And there's a couple steps. I mean, you need to know a little bit to know what's eco-friendly, care a little bit, and then take some sort of an action. And nothing big. I mean, you can be a conservation leader. You are a conservation leader with tiny things like taking your water bottle along so you don't have to stop and buy a single-use plastic bottle, right? And that saves money and time, but it's good for the earth because there are, something like 260,000 tons of plastic pollution in the ocean. And so that one small action of not buying a single-use plastic bottle is really helpful. And so that's all we're talking about is just something eco-friendly, something that you can do, small or big, and it makes you a leader. And we need some leaders right now because that we're having some environmental challenges, as I think we all know.
Yeah. And I love how you said everybody is a conservation leader because that's, my premise of my leadership and the things that I talk on is that we are all leaders. And so it's about giving ourselves permission. So you're saying, that anybody can be a conservation leader by implementing some just very simple things in our daily routines, it sounds like. Yeah.
Well, definitely. And I mean, I think the thing is people are already doing it. They're maybe not crediting themselves for it, and it feels good to be a leader. It feels good to make a difference. Mm-hmm. So turning off the lights when you leave the room, right? That's being a conservation leader.
Yeah. So what other, let's go there. So what are some other things like just, that the everyday person maybe doesn't recognize their conservation leadership that they're actually doing?
Sure. So there are so many things. I mean, I think let me talk a little bit about why it's important, and then I think as we think about each important one, it's going to kind of click in about why it's kind of automatic in some ways. It doesn't need to be hard. That's one of the important things about why to do it. So first off, I guess the thing everybody's expecting me to say that I'll just cover, it's not the fun part, is the part that we do have pollution on our planet, that we do have environmental issues, right? And they're pretty steep and they seem to not be going away. So why do you do it? Well, because we really should try to reverse, some of the problems we have. And some of them are pretty bad. Like there are places on Earth where you can't breathe the air very safely and where you can't drink the water very safely, right? And so that's not good. We want to stop that. We also have a lot of extinctions of animals, plants and animals. about every 2 years, 1.2 species becomes extinct. So if you're 40 years old, 24 species have become extinct in your lifetime, right? And we want to stop that because we don't know what that's going to do to us. And so I think one of the first reasons I always think of is the health of the planet directly affects the health of the people. And so having clean air and clean water and healthy food is good for us. It's good for our economy. It's good for our health. It's good for our quality of life. So those are reasons to do it. But those are kind of the depressing reasons. I had to say them. I think I should cover it. But they're sort of the depressing reasons. There's a lot more fun reasons, like it's absolutely a win-win. And this is a good place to give some examples. When you turn off the lights or reduce your energy at home, whether it's the air conditioning or heat, somewhere far from you is a power plant that's probably burning coal or fuel, fossil fuels, and so it's polluting the air. So you do that partly to reduce air pollution, but mostly to reduce the power bill. My goodness, power bills seem to be going up my whole life, and it's so very expensive. And if you have a big home with a pool and thing, you can be hundreds and hundreds of dollars. So small actions like that are conservation leadership, but they are absolutely helping you. Even the water bottle, I think, is a good example. So there are lots of win-wins, including things like reducing plastic use. So we talked about plastic pollution, but there are things that you're probably buying over and over again that you probably don't have to buy over and over again. So things like disposable shavers, all right? It's about $100 to buy like a metal shaver, and then you're just replacing the blades. So it's not that big of an investment that over a year you would probably pay yourself back, and then less trips to the store and less plastic. So if you sort of take a look in the refrigerator, incidentally, the biggest source of plastic pollution is single-use food containers. And I don't mean from going to the fast food place or from take out a restaurant. I mean, if you like open your refrigerator, I'm imagining my refrigerator, I've got a plastic orange juice container and a plastic milk jug and my salad dressing and peanut butter and jelly. I have kids, you can tell. Everything's plastic, the meat, the cheese, right? And that's the sort of thing. So looking for things like that you can do, making a choice in the store that is a little more eco-friendly. So, I mean, one of the ones I have, I actually thought I'd show you, is I have one of those lovely, I love it, a Keurig coffee maker. So do you recognize what this is, if you can believe it? It's a reusable Keurig coffee container. And honestly, I didn't get into this to be a conservation leadership. I got it to be a conservation leader. I got into it because I have a coffee that I like that doesn't come in those little plastic things, right? And so that's another example of sort of a win-win. You can be a luxury conservation leader, doing fancy reusable things, but you're still being a conservation leader. And I'll have another one here, which is, I've never tried this. So no, I'm not trying to advertise anything, but this is one that's organic and biodegradable. Who knew? I didn't even know. I just ran into this last week and I was like, I'm going to try that because I'm interested in easy, fun ways to be a conservation leader.
Yeah, when you think about the amount of people who have a Keurig machine and all the little Keurig pods that people use, I have that same one, that purple one that you have. Yeah,
you are a conservation leader, Susan.
I did not know. I'm glad I am, though. So what are the steps? So we talked about some of these things. Are there any additional steps to take for being a conservation leader?
Yeah, absolutely. So a little bit more on the why, just to kind of get into the steps. So I talked about how, the environment needs our help. We can all pitch in. And a big part of that, by the way, is being a consumer. So as you spend money, you are driving companies and corporations to produce more eco-friendly items. I think the organic food movement is a big example. Organic farming is considered more eco-friendly because they use less pesticides, less water. more sort of human labor, so it can be good for the economy and better working conditions. There's all kinds of reasons. And because of the popularity of it, you don't just find it in health food stores now, you tend to find it everywhere on menus and in regular stores. So making consumer decisions that demonstrate that conservation leadership is helpful and kind of moves the whole group in that direction. And plus the win-wins, we talked about that. And I wanted to mention before we moved on to the steps that I think maybe the biggest reason I'm interested in it, and I think it may be motivational to others, is because of this vision that I have of the world that I want to live in. And you heard me say I have kids, and many of you have kids and grandkids. But somehow it's become acceptable to have polluted water. And I talked about the air we breathe, the water we drink, but I hold in my heart, in my mind, this vision of a world where our waterways are fishable and swimmable, and when they're freshwater, drinkable. I don't think that's a lot to ask, but we have moved in the direction where very often beaches are closed. And people can't drink the well water that generations of people had been drinking before them. Now they're forced to bottled water. And in the Caribbean, for example, I would like to be sure that my kids have that opportunity to snorkel a beautiful, pristine coral reef, or for some, them to take their honeymoon, in the Caribbean, or that sort of thing. And so it's important to hold that vision and then to sort of act on that vision. And that tends to make it sort of fun for me to see, what sort of change we can have in this world and not accept polluted waters. It's really not okay. So the steps really are kind of what I said, which is knowing, caring, and then doing. And by the knowing, I do not mean anything complicated. I mean the simple things I just said about how a single-use plastic water bottle, often only 1 in 6 get recycled in the US. And they often wind up in landfills, and then they wind up in the ocean. And things like plastic bags in the ocean, for example, get eaten by sea turtles, so you can harm wildlife. So taking your reusable bag to the store and not using the plastic ones is another simple action. So if you're interested in it, I think a first step is to note what you're already doing. So Kelly here is already using her non-disposable Keurig coffee maker. And so, kind of note down what you're already doing and make a list, put it on the refrigerator. It's a public sort of commitment to here's my conservation leadership initiatives, and sort of embrace what you're already doing and keep it up, right? That's sort of the first step. I think maybe next, consider whether you can add more, or if you've been curious about something, or maybe you're going to purchase that shaver and you think, you know what, I'm going to go and I'm going to look and see if I can get one that will be reusable and last longer, and you may get interested in it because there's something near your home that you care about. Like maybe you have a polluted waterway or beach closures near your home, and then you do a little bit of search on the internet or through a book or friends and say, the issue there is we think it's overuse of fertilizers and pesticides on yards. So that's an area where I can cut back, or I can plant native plants and, replace sod and have to use less. Or maybe pet waste is another one. I think people don't realize, you think, oh, pet waste is a natural waste. But there have been many cases where when they've tested the water from like a beach closure, they've been able to trace it back to saying that it's a lot of people not picking up their pet waste. It rains, it runs into the nearby water body, and that's what's causing the pollution. So find something you're interested in, look up sort of the eco-friendly tips about it and try doing a few things. If it's 1 a month or 1 a year, Kelly, you really summed it up, which it's the cumulative effect. It seems small, to just not buy that one water bottle. But all of us doing that all the time makes for a huge change.
Yeah. And when I think about that, when I think about organizations and the impact that they can have by doing some of these simple things, Is there anything else that when you think about an organization, if they were going to take this on and say, you know what, we're going to raise our hand and we're going to be conservation leaders around here, what would that look like for an organization who might want to implement some of those changes?
There are programs out there and things that can help you, whether it's your local government or federal government, depending on where you are. So you can get sort of cheat sheets and lists. There's the green building movement and LEED certified. So you can look at that. I think usually what people do in a business setting is they look at their goals and they prioritize. And it might even surprise you if you took a little bit of time to do the analysis and then pick some things. The one I think of is I happen to be and live in Southwest Florida, although I'm in the Caribbean a lot. And there's the city of Naples near here. And many years ago, it might have been 10 plus years ago, they did an energy audit. And of course, you would guess maybe it's the commuting, the driving, right, to work that's causing it, or who knows? Maybe it's our ball fields being lit at night. Like, what would you guess? And what they actually found, the number one use of energy for the city of Naples was water and wastewater. And that was the number one energy use, was water and wastewater. So if you really dive into that, it made sense to me, because the way in Florida we get our water, and it's not the same all over the world, is we pump it from underground. So pumping it from underground, we're moving it in pipes using energy. It's going to people's homes, and then it has to be cleaned and filtered and moved away and heated or cooled or stored, like all these things. So we think of conserving water with the standards, like don't let it run when you're brushing your teeth, or if you're hand washing dishes, try to fill a pan and kind of soap them and then rinse them, so it's not just running. It's really not just about the water, which is important. There is a finite amount of fresh water, but and especially in Florida, by the way, because it only rains half the year, and then in the cooler season, it's not raining a lot, and we have a lot bigger population. So it's good to conserve water here, even though we see a lot of water around us and we think it's not as important. It's the energy use. Every time you turn that tap on, your water pump's running, right? So the long showers and all are raising your energy bill. So as an organization, kind of look at that picture and think about like what is probably our biggest use, and start kind of ticking off the list. So I just wanted to point out, it might be an unexpected area that you could really save money and make a big difference. You want to just take a strategic look before you start to just say, we're just going to do the coffee maker Keurig, we're just going to do the ride sharing. There might be some surprises in there to being eco-friendly.
Yeah, that's great information, Tabitha. And then I move to think about, so many times organizations want to, gather and do a volunteer effort. And so when you think about that, how could an organization maybe help the environment, show their conservation leadership within their community?
Well, sure. I do think helping and working with a variety of nonprofits, not just EPIC, but your local one, to see what their initiatives are and see where you can be of help. Obvious, I think, examples that are also really fun and really satisfying are things like coastal cleanups. It really does make a difference to pick up the trash before it hits that waterway and floats away. And we do at EPIC things like planting trees. So we use volunteers to do mangrove and reforestation in various islands in the Caribbean that have been really successful and rejuvenated habitats, made a big difference, created habitat. Frankly, it is really about that consumer thing. I know for EPIC, every dollar counts. Every small $5 donation to a nonprofit, I think, makes a big difference. Along those lines, I think something people don't think about is a lot of folks have investment portfolios. So I talked about daily spending, like trying to pick the non-plastic packaged item over the, sometimes at the health food store, you can get beans and rice and popcorn, like and put it in your own bag or your own container and not have to buy a prepackaged version, right? You can try to find things like that. The farmer's market is a really eco-friendly approach because you just bring your own bag and put the unpackaged things in there. But, remind yourself that your investment portfolio is a consumer choice. And, you might have just been put in there by a broker, but you could look and see if those investments match your values, whatever they may be, whether you're into water quality or habitat protection or something in your own community. You may find that there's an investment option that helps support something that you care about around nature. Check that out too.
I wonder how many leaders think about that, because I never did until our conversation. So I think that's amazing. As an additional step to whatever they're doing, that really can impact on a big way where they're putting their funding and their money. Yeah. So how can leaders magnify their successes?
Well, I think it's a lot about, leadership is about sharing, walking the walk, talking the talk. You are influential in small ways and big ways. I would say, one of the things I've noticed as I've thought about this and kind of walked this journey and thinking about, the environment and my work is, I might have been really great about taking the water bottle, but then maybe the kids weren't, or something disposable was going in the lunch, right? So you can look in your immediate sphere. If you make that list of what you're already doing, then just look around you and see if the people in your immediate sphere are doing that. And that's the same perhaps at work or your club. You might say, let's stop with the plastic utensils and the disposable things when we get together for lunch or whatever. Buy, like I have these metal straws that I just put them in my purse, and like I still have the diaper bag, I still have a little one. And so when we go to restaurants, we just don't get straws. We pull these all out, we put them back. And so, I started it individually, and then I started carrying them around like 3, 4, 5 and giving them to the people at the table. You know what I mean? And they kind of laughed and they didn't mind, and it was a conversation starter. So, there's sort of those things, taking my own bin to the restaurant so I don't have to have their styrofoam is not recyclable even. So at least some things that are, that is not. It just literally goes in the landfill. So bringing something there, and then they kind of laugh and they ask me about could we have a different product? What if we used a paper one versus a plastic one, right? And you sort of start having those conversations with people, making it fun and easy. Those are ways to magnify it. And you already said this, Kelly, like your company, your church, your group is a way to take it up the next level and ask and engage people in doing things like that. And see if you can make it fun. I mean, I really mean it about I actually think these are lovely. That's a beautiful purpley straw. So it's not about suffering, right? And I have another one too, which is toothbrushes. Did we talk about toothbrushes?
Oh,
that's a plastic one. These are bamboo ones. I'm not trying to advocate the company, but these are bamboo ones. I have some others. And there is a company in Southwest Florida that does them as well. So there's a local company. But if you think you're using 4 plastic toothbrushes a year, maybe more, over your whole lifetime, it's dozens and dozens. And the bamboo ones are really nice. They feel really good. And you can get some that are hand carved and beautiful. So it's kind of a luxury item versus a kind of a cheap plastic item that can sustain you for a while. And then you can throw them away, but you could literally bury them in your yard and they would just go away. So they're
biodegradable.
Biodegradable. Which, and I don't mean to bash plastic, by the way. I think I'll probably get some, letters from folks, in plastic industry, because it is a fantastic product, right? I'll just remind you that the science of it is that it is an unbreakable chemical bond. That's why it's miraculous. That's why it's great for surgeries, right? For medical purposes, for some space purposes, for some transportation purposes. But we have started using it for everything. And that chemical thing, it never biodegrades, never. It just becomes smaller and smaller plastic pieces to the point that we're finding bits of plastic in our own, in people's digestive systems, in animals' stomachs, and it's sort of with us for all times. And, if you want to recycle plastic, you have to use more fossil fuel to melt it down. So you're sort of, using up more non-renewable resources to reuse it. And the plastic is never as high quality as it was in the first iteration. So it's downcycling. Every time you recycle it, it's going to sort of a lesser product.
Wow. That's interesting.
Maybe that was just that's a lot of information, isn't it? But I say that because even after decades of doing this, it was a friend of mine who's interested in chemistry who said, why plastic is an issue is because it never biodegrades because of the chemical thing. And I was like, I knew that, but somehow it just hit home a little strongly to hear her put it in the chemical way. So
yeah. No, that's interesting. So how does this connect to the Caribbean conservation and your work with EPIC? I'd love to hear about that.
It connects to everyone on the planet. It's not necessarily unique to the Caribbean, but I think one of the takeaways from working in this field that is really interesting is, the Earth is like an island in space. Somehow my little 3-year-old heard somebody say the blue marble. And when the movie starts and they're dun-dun-dun, they show the Earth and the movies, she's like, blue marble. And it's this, we're like in space, all on an isolated place. And living on an island really gives you that sense. If something is thrown away on an island, it just gets trucked a few dozen miles to a landfill. It's never leaving your home island. And it's the same for us, no matter where you are. It's not leaving our home planet. We might have put it out of sight or out of mind, but it's still there. And so I think the Caribbean can teach us a lot about what it means to just live in a place where your resources are finite and they're right there, and they have to come from really far away at great expense. And I think that's been, forgotten in some places where it's a vast, country, you feel of unlimited resources. And they've done sustainability studies where they look at how much resources is an individual person or an individual community consuming. And we're finding that that group of people is consuming enough resources for multiple planets worth. So the idea is that the resources deplete, they become more expensive, more rare, and the quality of life declines. And so the conservation mentality is this idea of, it's not just for me, it's for my kids and grandkids, and to maintain my quality of life, and not to be known as sort of a waster, right? To be known as like, I am conserving, I'm using just enough that I need to feel comfortable and healthy, and safe. And I feel like the Caribbean really teaches us that, because when you live on an island, right, that's all you have.
That's right. And we need to take care of it. Just like our world, we need to take care of our world and the environment. And so I love that you unpack this for the leaders and teams, and really, broadening that to, starting with yourself, taking a look at what you are doing. I think even celebrate. I'm all about celebrating. So celebrate, right? When you find out that you're actually doing something that's good, like when you had the pod, and I'm like, yes, I do that. I'm a conservation leader. Giving yourself permission, and you definitely unpack that, and really being intentional. So intentionally looking around and saying, what are you doing? And then what can you do more of based on that, and some of the great information that you shared with us on how to do that, and how that can be, start with us and then move into, like you said, whether it's your organization, your church, your nonprofit, whatever you attach yourself to, finding an organization like EPIC, putting some funding there to support their efforts, looking at your portfolio for all you financial investors, and really seeing how can you connect what as you said, your values are and what's meaningful to you, and really looking at that as an opportunity to also be a conservation leader. So I want to thank you for coming on and really teaching us today about conservation leadership and why it is so important.
Well, thank you for having me. It's been so great to talk to you. And yeah, I'm going to go and celebrate my conservation leadership today.
Woohoo! I think we all should.
And you too. Celebrate yours.
All right. Well, you take care, Tabitha. It was so nice to see you, and I'll see you soon.
Thank you. Take care. Bye-bye.
If you like Conversations for Leaders and Teams, be sure to download us on your favorite listening platform. And for all you iPhone users, be sure to rate and review us on Apple Podcasts so we become discoverable to other leaders. Until next time, this is Dr. Kelly Whalen. Keep doing great things because our world needs leaders like you.